Good evening. I'm Matthew Rothstein, Deputy County Administrative Officer. Welcome to the Lakeport Community Visioning Forum. We're grateful that each of you chose to spend your evening with us. Thank you to community members, county officials, and representatives for choosing to be here and for sharing your hearts and your best ideas. How and where we invest our focus and our time informs the development of our priorities. Our priorities, in turn, drive many kinds of decisions. In most financial decisions, the choice to spend money in one area precludes spending in another. A dollar spent is an unavailable dollar. In an environment where money is scarce, financial decisions are particularly critical and have broad implications. The Board of Supervisors, County Administrative Office, department heads, and county fiscal staff are responsible for the quality of many financial decisions for the county government. But we can't make these decisions sitting alone in an office. We serve in a representative government, a government of, by, and for the people. To do our jobs well, we need to hear from you. You inform our priorities, both directly and through your elected representatives. To make grounded financial decisions, therefore, we must understand what matters to you. We also cannot afford to do everything that we would like to do, and not every community need aligns with the county government service or function. But at the end of the day, we want to do the right work, the most timely and important work. And that's why we, all of us, are here tonight. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you District 4 Supervisor Tina Scott.
Good evening and welcome, and thank you for coming out this evening. Before I start, can we please all stand together and do the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I knew Lakeport was not going to let me down if we would build this building. And really, how fortunate are we to have this amazing building to meet and together. And that's one thing that I found in this last year as your supervisor, is that there is so many people working and volunteering together for the betterment of Lake County, like preserving this building, our environment, our homeless, our youth, our seniors. It's been incredible to see the passion that we have here in Lake County. I'd like to thank our department heads that are sitting here at the tables that are going to help answer some of the questions that you have, and also some that are in the audience that are also here. I'd like to thank Mayor Turner for coming out, from City of Lakeport, and Councilmember Barnes and Spur that are also here. We also have questions for them. I'm sure they will stick around at the end and help with that. With that, I'm excited to hear your concerns and your comments and your questions. And with that, I'll introduce our CEO, Carol Hutchinson.
Thank you, Supervisor Scott. I'm going to come up here for a moment because I'm going to give you a brief PowerPoint presentation. And I hope you don't mind our impromptu moving of the tables. It just felt funny to be this far away from you, so we'd really rather be at your level as much as we can be in this venue, hence our last minute move. So thanks again, Supervisor Scott. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in this important community event. This is the fourth of our community visioning sessions. They've just all been wonderful so far, and we're thrilled to be out doing this in the community. Over the past 3 years, Lake County residents have shown the world some truly powerful examples of unity as we face a series of disasters, the scope of which few other communities have ever experienced. Lake County Strong is much more than a slogan. It really is a way of life for those of us who live here. Now we need to channel this can-do spirit to address Lake County's serious and worsening financial situation. The recent fires have devastated many of our local communities and have created dire financial consequences for the county finances as well. The loss of 1,800 Lake County homes as well as local businesses have significantly reduced county property tax revenues and sales tax revenues. By the end of this fiscal year, those losses will translate into an accumulative amount of over $5 million lost to the general fund, and that would be through the end of this current fiscal year, and about another $1.5 million for each additional year while we are in the midst of our long-term recovery. The general fund, which I just mentioned a moment ago, is the source from which the majority of our essential core services are funded, and in a few minutes I'll elaborate on what we mean by core services. In the midst of all these losses, as you can imagine, the cost of going business continues to rise, while financial resources necessary to provide those services continue to diminish. We're now reaching the point where something has got to give. For many years, Lake County has been well known to manage its public resources in a fiscally sound manner. We've kept taxes low, maintained strict oversight on county spending, and balanced our budgets honestly without unwise financial gimmicks that you hear about employed in other government entities. You may hear from time to time about counties declaring bankruptcy. That has not been us. You hear from time to time about retirees who retire from their jobs and earn pensions that are equal to or more than what they earned before they retired. Definitely not here in Lake County. You hear about counties that have massive debt. Lake County has zero debt. The purpose of tonight's Community Visioning Forum is first to educate residents about your county government's serious financial picture. Second, to engage you in helping us to prioritize your community service needs. And third is to seek your input in developing additional revenue sources so we can provide the kind of quality services that Lake County residents deserve. Members of our Board of Supervisors have come up with some really powerful goals, not only for the current fiscal year, but the future of Lake County in general. If you had the opportunity to come down on the floor before we started, they were readily visible. We may be blocking them to some extent at the moment, but hopefully you'll be able to take those in before you leave tonight. The hope will be, from the input we receive at all the community visioning sessions, is also to refine and develop these goals as a roadmap for the future of Lake County, using the input we receive over the course of these meetings. So tonight, we're talking about the budget challenges we have now, as well as long-term solutions to address it. We have a number of county department heads here tonight to tell you about the tightening realities in their departments. We also have additional staff here from our county administrative office available to answer your questions and facilitate this evening. So to get started, I'm going to go through a brief PowerPoint presentation. And I've got my pointer here because of all of our venues, this is the one I really can't reach, so we'll see how I do with the pointer. The purpose of this PowerPoint is really to illustrate for you how your money is spent. And so the focus of the first two slides that will come online in a moment is to show you that the majority of your local tax dollars, meaning property tax, sales tax, and gas tax, is dedicated to the most essential public services in our community. We're calling those essential core services. Other county services are self-funded from fees and from special funding that comes from the state and federal government. Usually those special funding sources are restricted to only those purposes for which they're allocated. Examples of those departments are water resources, health services, social services, air quality, building and safety. But tonight we're focused primarily on essential core services which rely on that property tax, sales tax, and gas tax. So listed on our first slide are the core services departments. On the left, you'll see all of the law enforcement departments. The district attorney, the victim witness division of the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, which is operated under a contract. The sheriff has numerous departments, divisions. See the sheriff coroner, the sheriff central dispatch, marine patrol, and jail facilities. We also have probation under law enforcement and the juvenile home. The juvenile home is also a contracted service now. And last but not least, medical services at the jail. A sizable amount of funding goes to the medical care of inmates who are incarcerated at Lake County Jail. On the right of this slide are the other departments that rely on this funding source we're talking about tonight, which is, again, property tax, sales tax, gas tax. So the other core departments are the Ag Commissioner, the University of California Cooperative Extension Program, Senior Citizens Programs, Veterans Services, Animal Care and Control, Parks and Recreation, museums, libraries, and roads. This list does not include a number of other departments which are funded by the same tax dollars. Departments are the Auditor Controller, the Treasurer, the Human Resources Department, County Council, Information Technology, and so forth. As you'll see on this next slide, these non-core services receive considerably less of these local tax dollars than do the core services. Not only do the core services receive the majority of funding, but in recent years, the board has made it very clear that these services are given the highest priority. And so what this illustrates is that the core services departments, in particular law enforcement, gets 51% of the tax revenue that we're talking about tonight. Roads gets 17%. The other core services get 9%, for a total of, do the math, I believe that is 77%, leaving just 23% left for the other non-core services departments, the ones that, for the most part, provide support internally in the county. This next slide consists of a graph which illustrates how, over the last 6 years, funding for the core services has gone up. It's actually up 27%. This most recent year that we have here for your consideration is fiscal year 16-17. It is up 27% in terms of spending from the days of 2011-2012. Meanwhile, the non-core services that rely on those same funds, the contributions made to those has diminished to the tune of almost 8% over that same period of years. Despite the growth in core services spending, I'm certain that the responsible department head sitting here tonight can make a compelling argument for still lacking the staffing and resources needed. There's just so much unmet need. And for the non-core services departments, the red line, the financial services, the financial circumstances are even worse. As illustrated on slide 4, our efforts to fund core services has become increasingly challenging in recent years in light of the fact that there has been no real growth in property tax revenue since the Great Recession. And just an important note, for all property tax collected, the county receives about 25 cents on the dollar. The rest goes to fire districts, special districts, and the like. So the county gets about a quarter of the property tax revenue collected. And this property tax revenue source has declined considerably over the years on an inflation-adjusted basis. So in addition to a sluggish recovery from the Great Recession, Lake County's property tax base has been further decimated by the series of unprecedented fires. And what this slide is really the cumulative effect of all of it, starting with the recession year, which was in 2008, you'll see that property tax revenues have diminished, again on an inflation-adjusted basis, by about $5 million up through 2016 and 2017. So recovery from the fires is a very long-term process, and rebuilding takes time. Using the Valley Fire as an example, the largest by far of the fires we've had, we're now about 2.5 years out, and thus far a little more than 10% of the homes lost have been rebuilt, and by rebuilt I mean final, absolutely completed. A number of others are in progress, but some of the lost properties may never be rebuilt. For some survivors, the devastation was just understandably too much, and they were compelled to move on. Homes never rebuilt result in permanent reduction of property tax revenues. To date, the accumulated property tax loss alone totals about $3.5 million, and it continues to grow by about $1 million a year during subsequent years of recovery. When you consider that property tax represents about 50% of our total general fund revenue, the failure of it to recover has already resulted in some staffing reductions and loss of important services. The details of that are illustrated on the charts that you see around the room. Let's see, in just a few minutes, my peers from the other departments will give you some of the details on the reductions that they have already suffered and what more will come should this trend continue. Not only has reduced property tax challenged our ability to sustain the core services levels, but the cost of disaster response and recovery has significantly impacted our financial challenges. As you can see from this next slide, the total cost of disaster response and recovery is presently estimated at about $26 million. So we have all the disasters here, starting with the Rocky and Jerusalem fires, about $400,000, Valley Fire, $16 million, Clayton Fire, just under $400,000, the winter storms of last year, this might surprise you, about $9 million in losses. Sulfur fire losses still being determined. And it's certainly true that some of these costs are being reimbursed, but the county will never be made whole. At this point, our best estimate, barring further disaster, is that Lake County will bear as much as $5 million in unreimbursed disaster costs. Which gets us to this last slide, which is intended to put our financial challenge into perspective. This last slide illustrates how the cost of core services is exceeding the new revenues needed to support them each year. Looking back at fiscal year 10-11, which is on the far side, revenue actually exceeded expenses at that time. The funds were set aside, and in the subsequent years, when things flipped and expenses began exceeding revenues, they were used to fill that gap. But as you can see, when you work your way up to 15-16, all of those funds have been exhausted. And when you look at 16-17, which is the last year on the chart, you'll see that the gap is totally unsustainable. So the bottom line is this: there's only so much money to go around. It's diminishing, and the situation is getting worse and worse each year. So what we're seeking tonight from you is truly a better understanding of what is the top priority to you. Where do you want to see our limited funds allocated? We also want to hear from you regarding your ideas for ways to find new money. And of course, we'll do our best to answer any questions you may have through the course of the evening. But before we open it up to hear your voice, our department heads will tell you a little bit about their departments and give you a brief overview of the information they have on their slides. And Mr. Sheriff, if you'd like the microphone.
Thank you, Carol. Again, I want to echo the thanks for coming out here and spending your evening with us. I know everybody's got somewhere else they could be, so we appreciate your participation in this, and I truly enjoy coming out and hearing from the communities and hearing what you have to say. You can hear from each of the department heads up here about what the budget difficulties mean to them individually as far as delivering services. You'll hear from me about mine. It's important to keep in mind that we're your government, and we're in the business of delivering services, and we need people to deliver those services. We don't manufacture a product that you go down to the store and buy. You get your services from us because there are people there to deliver those services. Sometimes people don't like getting my services delivered, but hey, that's my business. If you look at this chart up here, this shows all the position allocations in the core agencies. I'm going to move around so that spotlight can't get me. Or you turn it up. It is rough, yeah. So you'll see this chart here, and on the far right corner, there's a bunch of numbers in red. Every number that's in red represents a reduction in the number of positions that are allocated. For my department, it's reduced 8 down to 66 from 74 full-time deputy sheriff positions. What that number truly means is, that doesn't show there, is we have 9 positions that are unfunded. Everybody knows that the sheriff's department, all departments throughout the county, have difficulty with recruitment and retention for a variety of reasons. We compete with neighboring agencies like Sonoma and Napa County for deputy sheriffs that are qualified to work here, as do the building department, as do the road department, animal control. We're competing with those neighboring agencies, so recruitment and retention is very difficult here. So we have 9 positions that are unfunded. I have an additional 9 positions that are vacant that I don't have people filling. And I have one more person who is probably going to, one more deputy sheriff who's going to leave for another local agency. So that brings us down, somebody's have to do math for me, 66 minus 19 is 47. For a population the size of Lake County, on average in the United States, you're served by a number of deputies, full-time officers of 75 to 80. What that means is in Lake County, over the last 365 days, our average response time to a call for service is 30 minutes. When you're looking for law enforcement to show up, you got one of 2 feelings. Either I don't want to see them here at all, or they can't get here fast enough. A 30-minute response time is not adequate, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with. Because we don't have enough people here, because the funding is so difficult. It's a very challenging thing to do. Carol mentioned that we have a jail population that has medical needs. Those medical costs are going to increase tremendously here in the next couple of years as court decisions come down for improved medical care. As we have people that are spending time in our facilities that used to go to state prison to serve multi-year sentences, they're now right here in our local county jail that was built with the idea we're not going to keep anybody for more than 1 year. Now they're staying for years and years and years. They have ongoing medical needs, many of them, that need to be treated. We can't just put them in there and say, well, sorry about the medical condition. So we're going to have to meet those needs, and that's going to be an increase in costs. Every department head up here, myself included, has done everything they could to make the most of the little bit of dollars. We spent years and years doing more with less, and we're now coming to the point where we simply can't do more with less. We're going to have to start doing less with less. So we want your input. We want to know what the priorities should be for your community, and as Carol said, we also want to know some ideas. We're looking for ideas, ways to maybe generate additional revenue, maybe ways to increase business. I know somebody's going to say, well, attract more business to Lake County. Well, everybody knows that's a good idea, but how do we do that? We want ideas from you, the people that we represent, on what are the best ways to go about doing that. I will pass the mic on to Lars Ewing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Lars Ewing, I'm the Public Services Director for Lake County. It's a bit of I also have some of those non-core services, buildings and grounds for the county, and I will touch on that because I think Carol did breeze over that, the fact that there is an impact there, and there is a service that those non-core services provide to the public. Even though they are internal support, there is a direct impact. But I will focus on parks, trails, and museums. For parks, first off, and I am combining trails in there. Trails, we have no employees for trails. It's a push to get trails built, and it's to be honest, without any money, there just aren't trails out there. So that really touches on what doesn't get done without the funding. For parks, though, within the unincorporated portion of Lake County, we have about 25 parks. They range from postage stamp-sized parks on the side of the road to 1,500-acre mountain octite. We have 9 full-time employees for those parks. Now you'll see the parks is actually one of the few departments where we've sustained our employment. We had 9 in 11, 12, we have 9 now. What it doesn't show is how large that the park system has grown in that time. So we have grown, we are trying to maintain those parks, we just haven't added any employees to grow with that park system. Parks really are an essential service. We're all up here, in a sense, lobbying is what it feels like. We're lobbying for our departments, and I don't want to give that impression, but I do need to emphasize the importance that these services really do provide to the public, and what value does it provide to you. There's an economic value, health and environmental benefits that parks provide, as well as a social importance. It's a gathering place. So without that funding, what happens? Well, we maintain the status quo. And what does that mean? Well, that means, for now, no problem. We can maintain those parks. They'll stay the same way they are. 5 years from now, there's no improvements. 10 years from now, 30 years from now, there's no improvements. So you can imagine that the parks of, say, 50 years ago, if there were no improvements done to those parks, you might have that. That's what we're looking forward to in the future. To some extent, I think you can say the same thing about the museums. Museums, we have 3 museums in the county, and we have 1 full-time employee. And I think that's, let that settle in. 1 full-time employee for three museums. It used to be that we had just under 2. We actually had a 3/4-time employee. We only had 1.75 employees, full-time employees, and we had 2 museums. So you can see that something's wrong there. The lines are going the opposite direction, and that becomes a challenge. In the museums, that's obviously a huge part for our youth, for our culture, for our heritage. Without that, you're not going to have that history, your history that is in those museums. So I think it's important that we recognize what those essential services truly are. Hear from you, and let's hear where the focus is. But understand that with no new funding, new exhibits aren't shown. Decreased hours potentially. We just added museums, but we really need to start seriously looking at, if we reduce our funds, what can we sustain? So with that, I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Lars. So I'm Christopher Beach, I'm the county librarian, and just like the other county departments here tonight, the library's had to do more with less. Right now we have 6 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff, and a handful of extra help to run 4 library branches and our adult literacy program. We are lucky to have very many wonderful volunteers, and I write several grants per year to keep the doors open, but grants and volunteers only go so far. The library has a very lean budget, and you can really see that when you look on our library shelves. We just aren't able to purchase or glean from donations what we need to provide library service. There just aren't enough new materials to meet the demand. Patrons have to wait on long lists for the newest bestseller, 5 to 7 months or more. People can wait for the new nonfiction materials like a GED test prep book for 2 weeks to 2 months. Last year we had over 25,000 sessions on our public computers, and that's not even counting our Wi-Fi users. With such few staff, unfortunately, we just don't have the time to help people for longer than a few minutes when they need help filling out job applications online or have other questions. So if this trend continues, we will have a hard time providing the service that Lake County deserves. Any further reduction in staff will have to be balanced with a reduction in hours open to the public. The library collection will continue to become shallow and unbalanced, and ultimately, we just won't be able to fulfill our mission to improve literacy and support an informed populace. I'll hand it over to Scott DeLeon.
Thank you, Christopher. I'm Scott DeLeon. I'm the Public Works Director here in Lake County, and appreciate everyone being here this evening. I'll talk a little bit about my budget. Mine's a little unique. When you look at the budget book and you see our budget averages around $18 million a year, you think, well, what's happening? Why are our roads so bad? The great majority of our budget is funds, or our funds, that are dedicated to specific projects. we have actually very little discretionary funding. We average about $2.4 to $3 million a year in discretionary funds. And those are, when I say discretionary, those are funds that we can use for road rehabilitation and road maintenance. Over the last several years, we've seen a decline in that revenue because that discretionary funding is largely gasoline tax. As vehicle manufacturers make more and more efficient vehicles, with the electric vehicles coming online, we're seeing statewide less and less gasoline being sold. To put that in perspective, in last fiscal year, we were down over $1 million from 2013 and 14. So the road department has been taking a significant hit every year. And it shows. Unfortunately, and I'm not proud to say this, Lake County is, our road pavement condition is some of the worst in the state. We aren't the worst, but we're heading in that direction. With all that doom and gloom, I am going to give a bit of some good news, and we're very excited about it. You're seeing some advertisements and some of this showing up in the media. SB 1 was a Senate bill that was passed this year and signed by the governor. It enacted a new gasoline tax that took effect in November, and they're phasing in different components of that measure. A new vehicle registration fee went into effect in January. This new SB 1 is one of the first sustainable new funding sources for road rehabilitation and maintenance in perhaps decades. We're excited about that because we are expecting to see about $900,000 additional dollars come to Lake County for this fiscal year. We've incorporated that into our budget, and we have some exciting projects that we plan to do this next construction season. And as the state phases in the additional components of SB 1, next year our estimated revenues, additional revenues on top of the traditional gasoline tax, we're expecting to see about $2.5 million of additional funding come into Lake County. Again, we're very excited about that. My plan is to maximize those funds and use them for the purchase of materials where our road crews will be performing the work. We have to pay them anyway, so we'll be able to put those dollars into materials and be able to slowly turn the tide of road conditions here in Lake County. So we're, again, very excited about that. Our slide is over here, and if you have an opportunity to take a look at that, I think there's some interesting information with regard to where our funding comes from. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Bill Davidson. I'm the Animal Control Director in Lake County. Thank you. Thank you very much. I lost my train of thought. If anyone has come down here and taken a look at the charts and the one that everybody's been referring to, it spans a 9-year period from the recession to last year. And as everybody's pointed out, just about every department on there is doing more today with fewer staff than we had 9 years ago. That's true for just about every county department. I am happy to report that at the Animal Control Department, we have somehow miraculously been able to double the amount of services that we have been able to supply in that 9-year period. And I credit that to the staff. The staff is absolutely incredible. We have our, not only do we operate the shelter, but we have field services. And in addition to that, we have established our disaster response program LEAP, which has a huge volunteer component to it. We've also been able to establish an in-house medical program with our own contract veterinarian and fully equipped medical facility. We are providing a much more efficient manner of medical care to the animals that come into the shelter, as well as we're trying to spay and neuter everything we can get our hands on to help reduce the animal population. So it's been a huge success, and again, I credit that to the staff. We are mandated to operate the shelter and to take in strays. The same is not necessarily true for field services. We're here tonight to talk about the availability of funds and what services do you want, and what services are you willing to possibly do a little less of. In the event of cuts for the animal control department, we're potentially looking at cuts in field services. We will certainly respond to any kind of an animal emergency immediately, but the routine stuff that we do on a regular basis, stray animal pickups, loose dog complaints, barking dog complaints, are going to have to take a back seat, depending on the availability of staffing and what the future kind of looks like. I think we're all going to be here after the questions and answers, so feel free to mingle and give a chat.
This administration does not duplicate what we're doing, and we need our veterans fund, discretionary funds, to be the same we can raise. Secondly, as a member of the Silver Foundation's board dedicated to seniors, I'll do my best through grants and foundations to get additional money, a few million part of the budget we get, to supplement the funds we already have to get us over this rush spot.
Thank you, Jean. And the suggestions are being recorded up there, and Jean's a WW2 vet, so. Hi. All right, so name it if you want to share it, and whether you have a question or a suggestion, or if you have both, just.
Well, I wish I had a suggestion. I'll think more about that. Anyway, my name is Lupita Martinez, and I wanted to speak to the library, the support of the library. The library, for me, and I know for many in this county, is very, very important. It's a way for me to stay up to date with some of the technology that's going on as our country is moving in that direction. It's also gives me that technology gives me the opportunity to have more than one way to read. I love their the fact that they've started the Hoopla program, which allows you to do audio books and ebooks, and it's a terrific program. Also, the Zinio, where you don't have to have magazines piling up at your home, you can still get to enjoy them. I like having the library as a community place where some of the clubs can go and meet there and have information disseminated to them, and then they go out to the community members and take that information out there. Also, our library, I don't know if this is done around the state or not, but our library has that unique No Lake County program, and I enjoy the fact that if you want to know more about the place where you live, there's a way to do it, a method to do it. And what's really fantastic about that is that you don't have to show up every time they have a new No Lake County program being presented, that you can actually go. Is this still on? Oh, okay, it sounded like it just faded away. That you can actually go and get the DVD of the program and watch it in your own home. I enjoy watching all those young people come into the library. And I remember when I was their age and, did the same thing without thinking about what the world would be like without having had a place to go, to hear not only about the only place you live, to read about it, but also all over the world, to read things from all over the world and see that our type of living that we have here is not the only type that there is. Oh, and then I also wanted to mention that I think we need our libraries more than ever. I'd like to think, the library is a supplement to other ways that we get our information. But as schools also feel the crunch, our libraries actually have to supplant theirs. There's been one school library that has been completely canceled, and the other one that had to minimize their size. And so I think we need to be there for our youth and for their education. Okay, thank you.
Stephen, would you probably just keep an eye on time, just in case our numbers get to the point where, all right, thank you. And also, if you do not speak tonight, if you have a thought at 2 in the morning and you're like, hey, I need to let these people know, right up on the slide there where it says vision@lakecountyca.gov, you can send your questions, suggestions into that also. Name and question or suggestion.
My name's John Sayre, I'm a resident of Lakeport. And as a resident of Lakeport, I sometimes find myself struggling to understand, I guess, jurisdictional issues between the county and the municipalities. And so, without asking too leading a question, I guess I would say, does the panel have any opinions regarding possible friction, or the consequences of friction between the municipalities and the county, and if there are any opportunities to minimize those frictions and improve efficiencies by improving the relationship or the understanding of the relationship between the county and the municipalities, particularly as with regards to the way responsibilities are divided.
Are you suggesting like the merging of county and city services, or I want to make sure we
I
understand?
guess what I'm really saying is I would have a difficult time knowing what to ask you or what to suggest without, as a Lakeport resident, I mean, we have a regional representative in the form of Tina Scott, and yet, I mean, it's regional, but what questions would I ask regionally that would apply to the county? What sort of regional issues are of interest to the county that we could profitably speak to? And so, I would say, is there a relationship between the municipalities and the county that manages that issue?
Yeah. Well, one example, of course, is animal control services. The County of Lake does provide animal control services to the City of Lakeport. Again, I'm not sure I'm fully understanding your question, though. There are certain services that the county is mandated to provide that the city does not provide. For example, you probably have noticed that the City of Lakeport does not have a public health department. The County of Lake Public Health Department covers public health issues for the county as a whole. This is one example, and there are a number of other circumstances like that where the cities don't provide all services and counties fill those gaps.
Maybe then be more specific, it might be in the area of business development. Would it be appropriate as a Lakeport resident to address all issues of business development to the municipality, or are there issues of business development that the county concerns itself with?
If you're talking about business development within the city limits, that is generally within the scope of the City of Lakeport. But both city managers and I and a number of others sit on something called the Lake County Economic Development Commission, and we all share common goals for developing all of our local economies. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Your name and question or suggestion.
My name is Roberta Actor, and I live in an unincorporated area in Big Valley. And I found that Mendocino County is spending about $700,000 on homeless services, less than $300,000 coming from the county, and over $400,000 coming from the state and federal government. And I think they only have 85,000 people, we have less, but if they can do it, we can do it. Maybe we need to take a giant leap out of our comfort zones and look at revenue sources that might result if we took a less harsh prohibitionistic stand on on marijuana or what, something like that. I'm really appalled at 51% for law enforcement. That's pretty amazing when we have to charge a church for doing what the county should be doing and is doing in Mendocino. So that would be my first suggestion. Do something about that imbalance in terms of services to the public, including the least among us. The other thing is to have only 10% of the people who lost their homes being able to rebuild is disturbing. It almost appears like in sort of an echo of how the people without homes the homeless people are being treated, and people who are low income are not getting a fair shake. Maybe there needs to be a shake-up in the planning department so that they're serving these residents and soon-to-be former residents rather than the real estate industry or Dollar General. And then the other two suggestions I know are two things that you don't have complete control over, but single payer would help with the medical expenses that are occurring in the jail. And the other, that distracted me. The other thing, I guess that's it. If I think of it later, I'll write it down. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Roberta. So, Stephen, you have to keep me honest because my line's growing and stuff on that side, so you can help me with the time. No, just, okay, name and question or suggestion.
Hi, I'm Debbie Zachariason, and I'm president of the Friends of the Library. So, of course, I am a library supporter. One of our most important county services is provided by our county library system. Libraries are a cultural, economic, and educational resource for all the people of Lake County, regardless of their circumstances. For free, you can come to the library. Doesn't cost a thing to get in the door. They must be protected in our county budget. Everyone is hard hit by this economy, but the library is part of the solution. From free access to books and online resources for families, to job seekers using the library to find a new job. Everything nowadays has to be done online. And if you don't have a computer or access to a computer, you're left out. Libraries support lifelong learning. Just look at the faces of our children as they come from story time. Our public libraries provide basic literary classes for adult learners as well as preschool story hours, summer reading, and other programs that foster reading skills. These programs don't work if the library does not have up-to-date current materials for people to read and up-to-date technology with free access. I would like to see county library services expanded to provide better access for residents who lack a branch to the library. Lucerne, Oaks, County Library. The closest is Upper Lake, and it's very small. Achieving this goal will require more revenues from the county. That's why, with your survey, you have a little notation at the bottom about a sales tax increase. I'm not generally for sales tax increases, but the cities of Clear Lake and Lakeport have benefited from raising their city sales taxes. It's time for the county to take the same step. Please fund our libraries, and thank you.
Your name and question or suggestion.
My name is Unborn. I'm from Big Valley Unincorporated, Lake County. And I guess one question I have just generally, how, we've got all these bar charts and graphs and wonderful information. It takes probably a couple of lifetimes to digest. But how much of the budgets that you guys have is, how do I put it, is given by edict from the feds or the state, you guys have to do this. We're not going to give you the money to do it. How much money is spent to comply with federal or state regulations for which they don't supply matching funding? That would be one question. I'm not expecting an answer off the top. The other thing is, we're a small rural county, and problems that small counties have probably echo across. Bad roads, the need for revenue, a lot of money spent on law enforcement because of socioeconomic issues, things like that. What are other counties doing? And I'm certainly not calling for another study. What are other counties doing to fix the problem? How are they addressing the problems? What can be done? I'm sure there's some League of Rural California Counties or some such thing. But what are they doing so that we don't have to duplicate those efforts? The big thing for me, I think, is administrative costs. Money gets eaten up telling you that you need more money because we've got to fix the problem. Well, that's pretty apparent. So how do we do that? And if there's a way to band together as counties to fight the edicts that we get from the state, Sheriff, already you talked about the state pushing the inmates back to the county level for years. What about those medical costs? What about those increased costs you have with now housing felons for years on end when they used to be, they went to the big house after a year? And you've got presumably more really bad guys than just some guy stealing quarters out of a milk machine. So anyway, I'll close with flying the flag for the library, with the fight for control of information, with the recent edicts from the FCC and internet access. Information wants to be free, and it has from the days of Dale Carnegie, when he built Carnegie, when he funded the original library, those many years ago. We need that for schools. Where do you put 14-year-old boys that want to learn things? Where do you put young people? One place that they can go and get it for nothing and grow their minds is the library. Please fund the libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. Your name if you'd like to give it. It's not a rule. Question or suggestion?
My name is Nancy Hendricks. I live in Lakeport. Lakeport is my birthplace. This is the birthplace of my parents, and my dad's parents were born in Scott Valley. Sure. For that reason, I am particularly interested in removing Lake County from the position of being the poorest county in the state of California. I am discouraged by the attitude that we need to cut back on certain county expenses that are deemed of lesser importance, specifically the Lake County Library System. Economic benefits provided by the library far exceed the cost of operation, maintenance, and staffing. Our county suffers from a lack of social services, but the library provides the information through free Wi-Fi, free use of computers, free access to us outside agencies, and the ability to network with other libraries. The old idea that the library is only about print or that print is dead no longer represents the reality of the opportunity that the library offers. Our library is central to our community. Of all the other county departments, none show volunteerism and dedication by citizens to keep it a vital part of our lives. In your discussions over economic development, remember the order of importance is: number one, good health care. Number two, access to information. Number three, robust industry and retail. Access to information is a part of the most essential element for economic growth. Please make Lake County Library a higher priority.
Thank you, Nancy.
I got the drill. Hi, my name is Tim Barnes, and I'm currently Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Lakeport. First thing I would like to do is applaud you guys for holding these forums and coming to the public. It's hard to sit up there and face everyone when you're saying we don't have enough money to give you everything you can get. So I applaud you for doing this. So recently the City of Lakeport was confronted with some very similar financial difficulties as Lake County. One of the solutions that our city implemented to help prevent cuts in essential services was to place a sales tax measure on the ballot. Please don't throw things at me. Many residents of Lakeport weren't initially thrilled with the idea of higher sales tax. However, when people balanced the small increase in taxes against the loss of city services, parks, police protection, they voted to support the tax with a wide margin. This gained even more support when we formed a oversight committee to make sure the funds were being used in a way that the voters wanted. Lake County may want to consider putting a similar tax measure on the ballot to help prevent the loss of vital services for residents in our unincorporated communities. And I believe that you can trust the people of Lake County, these people sitting in front of you, to make good financial decisions. They have in the past, the record's being good, and I would support them. I do have one other idea. I don't know if it's already in place. Correct me if it's not. Does the library have a wish list of books that they need to round out their collection?
We don't have a wish list of books, but we do have a wish list of materials, and you can donate to the Friends of the Library, and we have weekly meetings on that. A wish list for books in particular, like that you buy off of Amazon, would be lengthy and difficult to keep up, but we need any new materials that are bestsellers or recently published, and we do accept donations on a regular basis, and that's part of what we do at the library, to get those on the shelves and out to the community.
So if I go out and I buy 5 books that I want to read, I can take them to the Friends of the Library, and they'll be on the shelves for other people to get to read.
That's right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Your name, if you'd like to share it, and whether you have a question or a suggestion.
My name is Wayne Nikas, born and raised here in Lake County. I'm currently resident of Lakeport, California here. First question I have is for every panel member up there is, if you could raise your hand if you successfully wrote a grant. Awesome. That's what I want to see. I would like to see more of that continue. Has the county thought, or do they currently employ a full-time grant writer?
The county does not.
Does not currently.
At this time, no.
It seems like that might be an ample opportunity for us to full-time employ someone that could actively elicit funds for every department up there that needs them, and the county as a whole. So that would be my first suggestion. Just sitting in the stands while you guys were having your spiels, I was able to search probably 16 state grants for law enforcement, Sheriff.
Come see me.
So, no, I understand, and it's a daunting task to take on that kind of package, the grant writing process. So, I also am here representing youth sports. I think Parks and Rec is a huge part of what we do here. I mean, we're Lake County. We're known for our lake and our recreation. We got to make sure that those things keep going. So I would not only challenge you guys to continue to find ways to grant write, to bring in more money for your departments, but also maybe challenge the county to actually post a position and trial that opportunity to bring in a full-time grant writer to possibly bring in some more funds. I'm not one to say, yes, let's go raise taxes, but I've seen the dividends, and the things paid due in the city of Lakeport and in Clear Lake, and I think that that's a wealthy option. So, thank you.
You know the drill? You know the drill?
Ron Green. So the county needs money. So one thing that is just obvious that the county can do to get money is to expedite and expand the legal cannabis program, which has been way behind other counties. Some counties are going to get really rich off the cannabis boom, and if Lake County keeps moving as slowly as it's been moving, Lake County is going to be lost on this. There's a lot of money to be made in the legal cannabis boom. We're talking fees, we're talking taxes, we're talking increases in real estate values, which then lead to more taxes from higher real estate value, real estate taxes. So that's one thing I suggest, that the county stop dragging its heels and move this and become part of the new legal cannabis boom. In terms of what I'd like to see not cut would be animal control, museums, and the libraries. Museums are a municipal part of the budget, and I just hope nobody's thinking about cutting the museums. I'm not sure how much the budget is the libraries, but the museums are almost nothing. I like the suggestion that Roberta made about starting some kind of a homeless program. Of course, we're here talking about we don't have enough money for what you're doing, but I think some money should be allocated for the homeless programs. I think that, I was wondering why some of the departments weren't represented here tonight. I don't know why. So the DA is not making a pitch for information to county residents. This happened during the fires. The sheriff kind of just walk in on his own sometimes and just give reports. But I do think the county needs to work closer with KPFC, and the cannabis thing is the big thing. Thank you very much.
You know, we've had more people come over here and I'm making you wait. Do you mind coming over? Come on over. And then I'll come back. But people kept adding to this line and they don't want to ignore that side of the room. Do you guys mind? All right. So your name and question or suggestion.
Okay, Tim Williams. Actually, I'm from Clear Lake, but I wasn't able to attend the meeting there. I want to echo what Roberta was saying and a couple of others. Social services is not core, my understanding is, because that's primarily funded from out of county. And it's very important that the real economic driver for a county like this is getting money from outside the county, from the state, from the federal government. And so, although it's not considered here a core service, expanding its capacity in grant writing, for instance, as another gentleman brought up, is what brings money into this county like nothing else. When we buy our stores that depend on people spending money there, an awful lot of that money comes through social services, expanding social services, getting grants for social services. For instance, SAMHSA has a grant I just saw today that millions of dollars for mental health needs of the homeless. And I don't think there's anyone in this room that's not aware that the homeless in this county have great mental health needs. That improves the quality of life for all of us in this county when we attend to those needs. The disadvantaged in this county are actually your greatest resource for money into this county. And until we recognize that and quit putting our heads in the sand, let me give you an example. A few years back, a friend of mine was a case manager in Mendocino. They were very proud of the fact that out of all the counties in the state, they were #1 in outreach for food stamps. Because if they can get more people that qualify for food stamps, then that's more money that goes into the stores, more money that goes into our economy. Our county was pretty much last in the state in outreach at that time. So anyway, another thing, I don't know anything about the marijuana industry, but I am told that the ordinance being considered would ban sales from outside to outside of our county. One grower I talked to, maybe representative, says that almost all of their sales are out of county to the Bay Area. So if that's going to be an economic source of economic growth in this county, they need to be able to sell outside the county. I'll go, thanks.
Thanks, Tim. My line over here keeps growing, so what I'm going to do now is move to this side, and we are going to adhere, come back, but we're going to adhere strictly to the 2 minutes, and Stephen, you're the timer. So if you're speaking, if Stephen raises his hand, that means that your 2 minutes are good. Thank you. Are you the front of the line? No. All right. Yes? Are you speaking? All right. No, here I am. Let's do this. All right. You just sit right there, like you're Oprah. Name and idea or suggestion in 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Alma Home. I'm glad not to trip up those stairs again.
I'm here tonight to express my support for funding, well, once again, for the libraries. You know, you've heard from a lot of people, but I have to add a few things. Simply that, first of all, I've lived in Lake County for over 40 years. I've taught in Lake County for 25 years. My children grew up loving and spending many, many hours in the Upper Lake Library and the Bookmobile, which is another possibility for those areas that are too far away from libraries, if we had the money. So that's something that was very, very important for my family and people in those areas. Libraries are a vital cultural, economic, and educational resource for all the people of Lake County. They should be a high, high priority for our county budget. As Christopher shared earlier tonight, our libraries are in decline, the budget is in decline, our staffing is in decline. I'm a member of Friends of the Library, and I see a lot of people here who I know, and people who have done this with me as well. As a friend of the library, we meet monthly and are always looking for ways to support our library. And Christopher will monthly tell us his wish list of things that we can do to help contribute. But we need a lot of help. There's only so much that volunteers can do. Many of us are also there during the week doing other volunteer work as well. And one other issue there that's really serious is parking. You know, that parking lot is so full that often there is no place to park. And that's okay for me, I can walk there, but a lot of people can't. And it is an issue. But what it really says is, you know, while this can be frustrating, it's a good thing, because what it really says is our libraries are well used and well loved. So I'm going to keep this short. Oh, my time's up? Oh my, okay. Anyways, please consider keeping that money coming to the library. We need your support.
Thanks, Elva. All right, your name and question or suggestion.
Dolores Folks. We've owned property here in Lake County since 1975. My kids grew up coming up here on the weekends and during the summer. I came up here to stay after I got injured at work, and I've lived here ever since. I worked here as a patient's rights advocate for the mentally ill. I volunteered here on the first board when we were developing Anderson Marsh to be a park and trying to get it promoted as a park. I've been involved in Lake County ever since I've been here. And I need to say to you that both my parents lived through the Depression, and during the hard times, both of them emphasized that the things that need to be thought about are the things that people automatically cut first. That's the free things, the things like you see cooperative extension. By the way, I was a master gardener there for several years. Parks and recreation. When you don't have any money, parks are really important. So are museums, libraries, and animal control. Animal control is really important in Lake County because the feral cats are killing the baby quail and the birds that are native to this country. It's appalling what the wild animals that aren't being controlled or neutered are doing to the community. And I just want to say that those are things that I think are really important to keep in mind when you talk about cutting services.
Thank you. You guys too? Okay. Janice, I think you've been up and down and all over. No, you. I think you've earned it. All right, so name and question or suggestion. All right.
No, I'm Janice. I've been in Mendocino, Lake County, Middletown for 15 years. I was raised in Santa Rosa, and this is my home until I pass away, unless if something happens, so then I'll leave. A good thing, but I think I don't drive. And there's a lot of people, the women, especially the cement sidewalk on Martin Street. There's sidewalk, but not like goes to the fairgrounds. That area where the bridge is, to get sidewalk there. And I don't know about the lights, but I know there's sidewalks so you can go down the street. And sidewalks, Bevins Road, there's people crossing over. Well, that's another issue, but the sidewalks maybe there's sidewalk on one side, but there's not sidewalk on the other side. If you go there and that side of the Martin Street, not Martin Street, but Bevins. And what's going on at Hamburger Hill? There's going to be accidents, people are going to lose their lives. What, are they doing sidewalks, or what's the end of the project? What's happening?
And thank you so much for raising these concerns, but you're talking about areas that are in the city limits, and the county doesn't have jurisdiction over those sidewalks. But we would be happy to, you know, I talk to the Lakeport City Manager pretty regularly. I'll certainly raise those concerns with her. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so our numbers keep, I know we have a limit, our numbers keep, all right, I want to get a count right now. Are there still people on that side, or did y'all come over here? Every time I look, the line is growing. Okay, so if you want to speak, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many over there? Somebody has to hand me a tally. 3, 12. And down 2 here.
And we have, what, about 15 minutes left on our hour, something like that?
So
we're really down to the 1-minute drill.
All right, so I pass.
Hi, I'm Charles Mitchell Jr. I grew up all my school years in Lake County, and I served a mission in the Philippines for 2 years. And as the Bible states, since we're Christians, when things get tough, the tough get going. And in the old days, the farmers have barn raisers to raise each other's barns. So again, they have that to raise houses during the burnout. Other economic issues is most communities way back then, if it wasn't the community, it was not so they can buy it. Yeah.
Thank you. Name, question, suggestion.
My name is Jennifer Hansen, and I just have a quick question. I'm speaking on behalf of the safety of our children. Just to be aware that the #2 leading cause of death amongst children is drowning, and we need to focus on our public pool as part of our parks. Right now we have West Shore Pool. It's the only pool that we teach our kids to swim in. The Lake County Channel Cats teach 250 kids every summer how to swim, and that pool is empty. And the county and the city and the schools need to step up and work on that pool. Because right now it looks like it's going to be empty this summer, and that means 250 more kids are not going to learn to swim. And it's the #2 leading cause of deaths among children. Parks is not just for fun, it's a matter of life and death. So I speak on behalf of the pool and our children. Please focus on it.
Your name and question or suggestion.
Hi, quick suggestions. We need to make more money for all of you, so make rebuilding easier, expedite the building department. Tax marijuana, legalize the growers, whatever, every grower that's not a legal grower is an illegal grower and they're not paying taxes. Get them all legal, tax them. Put convicts to work, the people in the jails, get them building trails for your person by your side there that will improve their health and lower the medical costs. Fix the roads. It will help raise property values, make people want to live here, make their houses worth more, and therefore the taxes go up.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bob Scala, and I had just, my wife and I just had a beautiful daughter 7 weeks ago, and we have a cannabis business here in the county, and myself and my family are moving into our peak earning and consumption potential, and I hope Lake County thinks about ways to retain us because we're moving into that space, not moving out of that space. And the other item is, right now in the cannabis industry, there's orders large enough to be filled that we don't even have enough growers to fill them in the legal futures market right now. That would, the order that I'm speaking to right now is worth so much it would generate more revenue than all ag crops combined in this county. This has in excess of $100 million. And we need to really continue to look at that and invest in that. So thank you.
Hello there, I'm Lance Williams. I'm in Lake County as well. I am burned out. I'm one of the 90% who was not rebuilt. I'm trying to get a cannabis license so I can give you guys $40,000 in taxes that we voted for. So I'm hoping that will go through, and I'm crossing my fingers, so cross your fingers for me. On another note, I'm a professional motorcyclist, bicyclist, and I'm wondering for the Park and Rec, is it possible to do any mountain biking courses here to bring in youth? Cobb has been destroyed. I opened the first mountain biking store in Mill Valley, the home of mountain biking for the world. So can anything like that be done to help out this community?
Excellent.
Anything can be done if you have the resources to do it, I think is the best way that I can answer that.
Hi, I'm Pastor Shannon, and I'd like to speak briefly to the housing crisis in Lake County. We've heard it in many different perspectives tonight. We've lost over 1,800 homes in the last 2.5 years. We have 90% of people who have not been rebuilt. Our homeless population numbers, like everywhere else in California, are going up exponentially, and there is federal money available that we are not applying for. No Place Like Home is one example. They've set aside $500,000 for Lake County, but it can only be accessed if the county applies for it. We need someone in the county structure that is looking at housing on a holistic continuum of care. Speaking from someone who is homeless, to a transitional shelter, to permanent supportive housing, and then to the resources that get them fully housed. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor Shannon. I'm going to call up the council and the people up here in the front row. Green. Thanks.
My name is Paula Capps. I was a local pharmacist here. The concerns of the legalizing of marijuana or cannabis, there's kind of no long-term studies on the long-term effects. And so the concern of that going into place, along with people out there driving under the influence, as we've recently seen on the news with the officer that was killed due to that. I understand it's all about money, and that's the reason we're all here, I guess, is to see how we can make more money. The other thing is the interim mayor of Lakeport. He wasn't there at one of the council meetings that I attended. They were talking about the increase in the tax. Okay. They spent $25,000 for a survey to see if that tax would pass on the ballot. To me, that $25,000 could have been better spent somewhere else. They could have just put it on the ballot. And, okay.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you. I am Joan Moss. I am part of the Planning Commission for Local Hazard Mitigation Plan. It is my understanding that the county needs to maintain FEMA eligibility for grant funding. Mr. Carnathan is getting feedback from the public, just like is going on here. We're going to apply for a big grant in order to solve some problems. We had a national disaster. The people on Cobb are still not back together. I think we need to be aware of the needs that are on these goals. I'm going to send a copy of the goals to Carol Hutchinson, and I know that Sheriff Martin already probably knows about them. We need to, the number 2 goal that I'm into is establishing a countywide public information program that utilizes a variety of outreach strategies and mechanisms to reach all Lake County residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Those lights are cool. Is that you? Nicely done, Joan. Right. Name, question, or suggestion in 1 minute.
I have both. My name is Seth Cantu. I've been around. I have a couple suggestions, ideas. As far as the mountain bike trail, we do have resources. We have Pathfinder clubs, we have Boy Scouts, we have a lot of people that I have not seen one person come up and say, hey, how would you like to fulfill those community service hours? We have a lot of clubs out there that will be more than willing to cut your trails for you. We've got them, they're out there. Also, I got a question. What's being done with the juvenile detention center? Because I would love to rent it. We have a whole bunch of homeless people. I'm helping run the warming center here at the Lakeport Church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we have a budget of about $44,000 a year. I would like to increase that and not send you a bill. We have the potential. It has a commercial kitchen. It has a lot more rooms than I've got. And we could turn it into a prep kitchen for some of the businesses here in the area so they don't have to pay prep cooks. We can prep we can get them a trade as far as serve safe. We can actually develop a revenue and we can give that to the county.
Thanks. How can you fight? I've been around. That was pretty good.
To answer the question about what's being done with the juvenile hall facility, the probation department uses that to run their day reporting center. That's the place where they run programs for people that are under supervision, under probation. They provide them services such as job training, anger management classes, drug and alcohol, and those types of classes.
Are we using the full facility?
I haven't been in there. I don't know if they're using the full facility or not.
So Michelle, we really are getting up against the wall in terms of time, so we need to go into speed round.
Okay, speed round. I'm good at speed rounds. Actually, my name is Sarah Ryan. I work for one of the tribal governments in this district, and I have a suggestion or a question and a suggestion. The question is, why is water resources considered or why is water resources not funded by the general fund when it came out of the Public Works Department, which is funded by the general fund? It has many things that it needs to comply with in terms of regional board requirements. And when it doesn't comply with it, and we don't have the services we need to keep this lake in good shape, that's affecting people's drinking water, it's affecting recreation, traditional uses, and all of that. So that's my question.
Okay, we're going to answer that question. We're truly up against the wall with time. Scott, I think you could probably answer that question, can't you?
Vision. Email. Okay.
So I believe the question, though, was why is water resources not funded by the general fund? Was that the question? Yeah. Because it's funded by other sources. It receives fees and other funding sources, so it's not in the group of departments that was one entity.
But it's underfunded.
Property tax revenue.
It's underfunded, that's the problem.
Underfunded, okay, thank you. And again, when we first started, just a small number of people indicated they wanted to speak. We've still got a lot of people standing and we've used our hour. How many people left are hoping to get a word in? How many have something to say that hasn't been said yet? What we would like to hear from is somebody that has something to say we haven't already heard. So let's limit it to that and 1 minute, please.
I'm retired.
I would love to write grants, and I'll do it on a voluntary basis. In exchange for you teaching me how.
This ordinance. Take 100 growers doing 20,000 square feet, that's 2 million square feet at $1 a square foot for Measure C taxes. That immediately creates $2 million for the county. Each farm generates 1,000 pounds times 100 properties makes 100,000 pounds. The state has already determined that a fair market price of a pound is $1,200 a pound. That's $120 million worth of cannabis that Lake County can produce just off of small 100 growers that are already trying to come up and be upfront with the county and go through a comprehensive ordinance with you all. Those are numbers that everyone should look at and understand. $2 million can be made in one day in Lake County very easily based off taxes.
Thank you. You guys have been in line for quite a while, so.
Hi, I'm Attorney Dennis Fordham. It seems that what we need in Lake County is confidence to rebuild and to move into Lake County. That means spending money. Getting that money may mean utilizing loans, and since we do not have a deficit, that may be an opportunity for us to get some loans in order to bridge the gap and allow us to remain an attractive place for people to rebuild and to move in for investments. Otherwise, people are going to leave and no new people will come in, and then it will be a spiraling down. Thank you.
Name's Grant Jordan from Kelseyville. I came to talk about fire prevention, prescribed burning, but I'd like to talk about more conventional business and how to get it here to the county. Bringing investors over St. Helena is not a good way to bring money into this county. About 10 years ago, I was at the airport. I had an airplane out there. I was working on it. 2 business jets flew in. These are expensive planes. 6 or 8 people got out in, $1,000 suits. Couldn't find a bathroom. There was no bathroom at Lampson Airport. It's county-run airport, no bathroom. I went to board of supervisor meetings, multiple ones, over more issues than just a bathroom. 10 years later, there's a porta potty. When you want to bring business people to this county, you can't have that. You can't have semi-clean porta potty, no light in it if they happen to come in or want to leave in the evening. It's an embarrassment. We need to attract business, not run it off.
Thank you.
Hi, Suzanne Russell. I'm a planning commissioner as well, but Parks and Rec commissioner. And the one thing that I haven't heard from you folks or anybody is the importance of our lake. Hello, we have one resource in this county, in this town, and it's our lake. I have done a little bit of research, and there is. Oh, okay, thanks. Right. If we clean up our lake, they will come. That's just the bottom line. They will come. It will be like the 70s, hopefully, because I keep hearing people talk about the 70s and how great it was. It's illegal to put anything in our lake. However, there are several counties in Southern California that have cleaned up their lakes with a fish called tilapia, the one that some people eat. It's a very accommodating fish, I'll make it short, but I know that somebody on this panel can get a hold of the people, because I guess it's state-run, that can possibly introduce it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Murphy from the Big Valley. My question is, how big a budget shortfall do you anticipate in the next year? And do you expect that to increase in the next 5 years or stabilize?
Hi, Phil. I'm sorry, I'm Jeff Ryan, county's budget officer. The deficit, well, we don't ever have a deficit because we always balance our budget. It's becoming increasingly difficult. So, as you can tell from that one graph, the gap is getting harder and harder to fill. we've been filling that gap by reduction, frankly, in staffing. We're actually spending less money now than we did back in 09-10 on salaries. So we'll do whatever it takes to make sure there is no deficit.
I'm trying to get a sense of the scale of the cuts that you're asking us to help you, decide on. So that's not a helpful answer.
Well, in terms of, you want a dollar figure?
Yes.
Yeah, $5 million.
$5 million.
But is that increasing throughout the next years? Is that going to continue?
Mhm, it
It's
is,
not
yeah.
going to close back in as those 10% become,
Well,
all those houses get rebuilt?
It's a really good question. If
Sorry.
No, if the houses get rebuilt, then we'll get back to where we were. That's going to take a long time.
Hi, Michael Green. Just very quickly, of all the revenue we've talked about, thanks to nearly 2 out of 3 voters in Lake County who already supported cannabis taxes through Measure C. So that part of the equation, thank you. The county is working on the land use regulations, and we expect to see some progress on that this spring. And if we're really lucky, knock on wood, we're going to see some Measure C tax revenues this fall. The other part is the sales tax increase that was being proposed, and I would suggest strongly be bold. Yeah, there's going to be some pushback. We saw that in Lakeport with Measure Z. They did a special tax in Clear Lake, but it passed. So there is going to be pushback, but of all the things you've talked about increasing revenue, I'd say get that on the ballot for November 2018. And just like Measure C, we did a little pack in support of that. I think you'll see some private-public support for that moving forward. And so all the things I heard that was most exciting was the idea that you were talking about a sales tax, and I would encourage you to do that.
Thank you. Is there anyone left? All right. You're the last guy. Make it,
We have
make
a
it
couple
good.
front.
Make it good.
It'll be quick. Gordon Haggett, Lakeport. I think there's only one other person here that spoke out against the cannabis ordinance. I'm going to be the second one. I don't think this is going to be the cash cow that we're all hoping for. I think the lack of attracting people to our county when we become the cannabis capital of the state is going to nullify any of the benefits of the cannabis. We have to ask ourselves if we want to be, if our agricultural products are going to go from grapes and walnuts and everything to cannabis. I don't know if that's something that we want for our county.
Yes? All right.
My name is Ann Blue. I live in Lakeport. I'll try to make this real quick. I have a question in regards to the lake. A number of years ago, there was an experiment on the lake with a floating island. Maybe you remember it. I never did hear anything more about it. Was it successful, or does anybody know anything about that?
Could you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Okay, a number of years ago, we put a floating island in the lake down in Clear Lake Oaks. And I'm wondering what the results was from that.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
There was no gas
And I'm so sorry.
Okay, and then I have one thing I'd like to say in regards to safety in the city of Lakeport with a county connection. And I'm referring to we talked about the library a lot tonight. It was built several years ago. At that time, 15th Street was not a developed street. Now it is a developed street, and there is a safety hazard there in that the county part of that lot is not developed. So it's a one-way street. And I just would like to suggest that we think about that and try to correct the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
We're truly at a point where we need to wrap up. We've run over a little bit on our time. And so hopefully Supervisor Scott will join me in thanking you for coming out tonight. There continue to be ways for you to give input. If you haven't had an opportunity to fill out a survey, take one with you tonight. Take one to your friends, family, neighbors that couldn't join us tonight. We welcome any and all surveys. And we also have the email address established up there. It's vision@lakecountyca.gov. Tell us your thoughts. I think one of the most important things to advise you here as this meeting draws to a close is that this discussion is going to continue. On February 6th at 9:30 a.m., the Board of Supervisors will hear the full report and a summary of all of the input received at all of these sessions. What we all know is that creating a long-term financial and economic vision is vital to Lake County's future, and your input tonight is a really important step in that process. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, and I think a lot of us are going to stay a little bit afterwards. If you have some questions you still want to come down, feel free to do so. Thank you again for coming out.
Take a survey on the way out.
I said take a survey on the way out if you don't have one. Thank you.